Here's a 4-part series that shows how language and culture can be lost, even to people who grow up with them both. After you view the 4 lessons, I would like you to talk to your older relatives and find out more about where you came from. See what was lost along the way. You'll probably find that you have a more interesting history behind you than you realized. For now, meet Tía Grace. You grew up speaking Italian, isn't that true?
Correct.
And go ahead and describe that for us.
Well, we lived in a neighborhood that was almost 90% Italian people, a lot of older people, and I used to talk fluent Italian in those days.
Where were you?
In Corona, New York, which was in Queens. The borough of Queens in New York City.
We have a lot of students out there watching us around the country, and they're going to be very interested in knowing if you speak Italian.
Not very well, and I don't hardly speak at all because I moved to Indiana when I was 23 years old, and I lost it because there were no Italian people here that I knew, and so I never got to talk Italian.
You met Hubert Riedemann around the wartime. That is, World War II.
Yes, I did.
This lesson today is about languages, not just about Spanish. We've had some lessons that show how Spanish is lost, and it can be lost in different ways. Sometimes it's because people they're ashamed of who they are. Sometimes it's because they're tired of fussing with people who are prejudiced against them for the language that they have or the country that their ancestors came from, or just because English becomes the most spoken language in their home and they decide at some point that they really don't want to speak 2 languages. This is not the case for you completely, but somewhat, right? I mean, around World War II, things became different.
Well, during World War II, I was in high school, and I was taking the language Italian. And immediately when the war started, they discontinued it.
So you were studying Italian the way everybody in this country studies English in school.
Well, I spoke the dialect to the neighbor ladies, and they knew what I was saying, and they knew, I knew what they were saying. But in school, we learned the correct way, the verbs and everything else about it. We learned to speak correctly.
How did you like studying the language that you already knew?
Well, it was different. It was quite different because they have so many dialects there, and it was nice. It was nice to, to learn the different words and what they mean.
Where did your parents come from?
Well, my father came from Salerno, Italy, and that's where the first battle of, I think, World War II was fought. And my mother came from right around where we lived, Corona, New York.
But they both spoke Italian, and they spoke it to each other?
Yes, and they spoke it when they didn't want us to know what they were talking about.
In other words, they were completely fluent in it, but you kids weren't.
That's correct. That's correct.
Well, but you were able to, for the most part, you were able to get around with Italian.
I could get around. I mean, when I spoke to these older ladies, they knew what I was talking about, and I knew what they were talking about.
Did you kids speak Italian to each other and around the neighborhood?
No. No, we didn't. That's something we did not do. Just to the older people we talked it.
Did your parents ever say anything to you in Italian after you moved away and got married?
Definitely. Every time I would go back, my mother would talk Italian to me, and I would say, huh? She said, "What's the matter with you? Don't you remember anything?" And I said, "Well, I have no one to talk to, so I forgot it. Completely forgot it."
And we're doing this interview in Indianapolis, Indiana, so you can see, if you look on your maps, that we're a long way from New York. And New York is a long way from Italy. But a lot of the states along the Atlantic Ocean out east speak Italian to this day, don't they? What I mean is, there are a lot of Italians out there. I don't mean that they all speak Italian, but wow, when I look over some of these schools' faculties, there are a lot of Italians out there.
We have one in our ladies' club, in fact, and I understand her just a little bit. She doesn't speak English.
Do you wish you had kept the Italian?
You bet I do. You bet I do. Now I do have a friend who is Italian, and she comes from a home that the parents never spoke English. And every once in a while she'll say a word to me, and I'll know what she means.
What are some of the things you remember from childhood in Italian?
Well, my mother making ravioli or fixing the Italian meals that I myself forgot how to make. But I do remember that. And we also, like on Christmas Eve, would have certain foods that we ate and things that most of all, I must tell you about something Italian, is that I'm Catholic, and we have a feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel. And that's an Italian saint, you might say. The name Carmela and Carmine all derived from that. And on that day, which is July 16th, they'd have a great big feast in the neighborhood. And they'd have, along the sidewalks were a lot of shops or places to eat. They'd have like Italian sausage or meatballs that you could get, and all Italian foods. And then they would take the statue out and pin money on her and go through up and down the streets that were close to us. And that was something we used to look forward to, because they had a lot going on, and we kids just had a great time.
What did they do with the money?
They give it to the church.
And what did the church do with it?
Well, keep themselves going, I think.
I see. How did your parents feel about you kids speaking Italian or English in the home?
Well, that was a very good question. My mother would like to speak Italian to my father. She spoke it better than him, and he's the one who came from Italy. And he would always say, "We're in America now, speak English." So a lot of it was cut off right there.
Why do you think he said that?
I don't know, he loved America. He loved it when he came here.
He wanted you to fit in?
Yes. Yes, I think that was one of the things.
Why did he come to America?
I guess they all thought the streets were paved with gold. I don't know. But they thought there would be a better life for them.
Did you ever face any prejudice because you were Italian or because you spoke Italian?
I don't think so, no.
But he felt that the thing to do to be a patriotic American in this new land of his was for you to speak English.
Correct, yes.
Did he speak Italian to anybody? Did he always speak English? Of course he didn't.
No, he used to speak Italian he was part of that society that we had, that Society of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and he was always, there were just two men in it. They were all old Italian ladies, and the old Italian ladies always dressed in black because most of the husbands were dead. But here they'd come down the street, and it was really funny. You see, the two men leading first, one was the president, one was the treasurer, and all these old Italian ladies who were in the society following them. And they'd be walking down the street to go to a meeting. It really was funny, and we used to laugh at them.
So he told you to speak English, but he spoke Italian when he wanted to.
Well, because those ladies didn't speak English.
He didn't speak Italian to anybody else? I mean, to Italian friends?
Yes, a few of his friends. It's a funny thing you mentioned that, because I remember one time I was there visiting, and he was so upset because he said his last friend passed away, and his name was Lawrence Orsomarso. He was an Italian man. And my father said, I have no more friends, they're all gone. I remember that very well.